had to dump some files and make sure I had space because of all those CEUs.
Yeah.
We recorded. We got them done though, man.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that they're done. I don't really want to do 5 more.
I didn't realize how stressful that was.
Yeah. I think that there's a good point about it for everybody is that what we were doing is CEUs for people that were not inherently interested in the conversation that we were having. And so we were having to dumb down the conversation because they weren't specialists in psychology.
What a segue.
Right?
Nice. That was good. Well, so you should probably explain who this dumb population is.
dumb to a very particular content. Incredibly smart, but they don't care. Like they just don't care about hypnosis or mental health or
no,
it's not at all.
Crush it mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking to lawyers.
We were talking to lawyers.
We're doing CEUs for attorneys in Florida, and as in a partnership with Community Legal Services.
Yep.
And
with the Florida Bar.
Yeah, with the Florida Bar.
Could be seen by the Supreme Court. Yeah. I doubt it, but it could be.
No,
it's in the national archive of CEUs for all those.
If they're interested in mental health, it will be.
Yeah, they'll be there.
That's the issue.
And it was on some of the greatest, but also perhaps the most granola bar crunchy of effective communication, work-life balance, stress management, burnout, resilience. It's
But it was. My experience was very this is stressful trying to make it so pungent to impact somebody's life.
Yeah.
But also so basic based on the population that we were told we need to be speaking to, which is the attorney that doesn't know anything about mental health.
Yes. Well, I feel like this with social media every day because it's I have this amazing idea that's totally transformed my practice and I want to share it with the world. And then it's it's 5 minutes long and it starts out with this very complicated sort of expose so they can understand the problem and nobody watches it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had one that I posted that I was very proud of and it got a couple hundred views. I was like, you know what? That one was for me. I posted that one for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it is that way. It is that way. And I guess that leads us into our topic of conversation today because I've got some questions I'd like to ask you.
Same.
The topic of today is AI and counseling.
Yep.
And I don't think that this is the last time that we're going to have this conversation. In fact, I'd like to have some other people on the podcast to talk about this topic as well. But I like what you're saying of trying to make things punchy, trying to make things interesting, because there are people who don't want to think about a topic. And that's my gripe, right? A lot of people ask, do you think counseling is going away because of AI? And I'd like to ask you that before I share my opinion. But I fear, and my biggest fear and sort of the premise of what we're going to talk about today is I fear that we are outsourcing thinking.
Absolutely.
And that comes with a huge price tag for human beings.
If we're outsourcing thinking, how do we answer questions like, what do you like? Or who are you?
Got me beat.
Right.
Got me beat.
Well, and as a preface for me, before we get into this, I am actually working on with a AI company out of New Orleans that is building a therapeutic bot deepfake of me.
You said deepfake, and so I thought about all the deepfake porn. It's not that kind of bot.
It is not that kind of bot. It's fully clothed. It's going to be a subscription on my website so that people can talk to an AI version of me in between sessions. That is not going to be counseling. Ethical considerations for everybody that might be worried about what those are. I was going to ask. They're all being taken into considerations as far as ethics, morals, and all of that stuff. And it will not be counseling.
So then, what will it be?
It will be a resource for people to do the most basic of mental health, get the most basic of mental health resources. But that's what we're going to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess.
Where's that line?
Yeah, where is that line? Is it even helpful? I mean, you seem to think so.
I think that it will be...
Because you're investing into it.
I mean, I'm helping the company out with a whole bunch of other projects. I don't think that I would pay for this if I had to design it from the ground up.
So just kind of like a little bonus?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it helpful? Should people look to AI for therapy?
The way that question is, the answer is absolutely in no world, absolutely not.
Why not? It seems very effective. I mean, there's a lot of people, I'm playing devil's advocate, I don't believe in it. Horse shit. But it does, I mean, clients tell me, and like you look at it, it's like seems very effective. And you might even argue that because it's pulling, and if you are to manage the data that it's pulling from, it might even be more accurate than your run-of-the-mill counselor that you run into off the street.
For what?
Well, for therapy.
No. The research I don't think is anywhere close to saying that it can be more effective or even close to have the therapeutic effect.
Yeah.
I think there's many mental health benefits though.
I mean, there is some research to show that when they run tests on emotional intelligence and being able to read emotional context, human beings get 50%, and the AI now gets 86% in accurately reading the emotions. Isn't that wild?
Well, first of all, I would challenge whatever the sample population is.
Yeah, I'll have to pull up the study. Maybe we'll dig into it more. But people quote me things like this all the time, and like, I use my clients in between sessions. They're like, I was gonna have a session with you, but then I asked Gemini.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah, I get that too.
Oh no. Oh Lord. Not for fear of my job, but for fear of the consequences of outsourcing that.
If that was the case, we wouldn't have liability insurance.
Right.
The fundamental aspect of why I'm not afraid is based on something that we talk about all the time, which is belly to belly, belly button to belly button, unconscious communication. I bet the stats will show that the sample population for therapists that are only reading the emotions 50% of the time.
Well, it was general population. It wasn't even therapists.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that makes more sense.
Yeah,
and I'm actually surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't therapists. Yeah, it's just general people get about 50%, half and half, if they can read the emotions right.
Yeah, but even then, it's through talking and general communication. We're not communicating on a belly button to belly button perspective.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not afraid of it. And what I would like my personal AI tool to be is resourcing. It is doing all of the stuff that I don't really like doing in therapy, which is the very cognitive stuff, the setting boundaries stuff, the problem solving stuff, and the where do I go to learn more about this topic stuff.
So I think then it begs the question of, if you're not doing those things, then could you perhaps define what is counseling? Like, what is the therapy? If it's not those things, which I think a lot of people think it is, then what actually is it that we're doing?
Which is why I like hypnosis so much. It is creating such an unconscious space that a client can be so safe to do the work that they need to do unconsciously, using the energy of that space that was created. When I look at myself in therapy, I'm not doing much to the person in front of me. I'm creating the space to make it so that they do all of the work. And I don't think that AI can do that. It's reactive to problems, to very high level cognitions. I mean, how would you answer that?
Oh, yeah. I was just making sure you got to the end.
Yeah.
My answer to it is, well, I think there's a lot to it, but maybe not. We have to kind of define, what is AI and what is it doing, and then what is the therapist doing, and then you can contrast those two. So therapy is this connection But it's specifically a connection from one human to another, and part of that connection is error. Right, and so
absolutely,
with AI, we're pursuing perfection. We're pursuing, it always gives the right interpretation, the right answers, the right information every time.
Yeah.
That is the goal of developing artificial intelligence. That is not the goal of my job as a therapist. Now, it certainly is not wise to increase my rate of error in a therapy session. That's certainly not the goal, to be erroneous. However, what is the goal is authentic connection. Yeah. There are many times in a session where I will talk with the client and I'll be like, well, it sounds like, I just had supervision before we started this. And in supervision with my interns, I said, it sounds like what you're talking about is a hidden agenda. Do you feel like that's the right phrase to describe the feeling that you're feeling? If it's not, please argue with me. And I'll do that with my clients all the time. I'd be like, based on what you're describing, I'm hearing you say that is a guilt feeling. Does that accurately describe it? And if not, like, can we talk about it? I'm almost introducing error, not on purpose, but I'm introducing myself, and part of myself is the error, so that way they can correct me.
It sounds like you're talking about, like, if I can overly simplify that.
Yeah.
The difference between rigidity and flexibility.
I think that's part of it. I think it's a two-way connection. When you're talking with an artificial intelligence, it is, well, definitely not a two-way connection.
Right.
And so I think as we kind of define, like, what is the two-way connection, I think we understand what do you call that in business? The unique sales proposition of a human counselor.
Value
proposition. Yeah. We've been doing human-to-human connections so much that I think we've lost, like, what is the real value proposition here?
Yeah.
If it's not tools, techniques, and accuracy, then what's the real value proposition? We've been human-to-human connection for so long that we may now be in a place where we actually have to define what that value proposition is.
Happiness.
I would no. Well, I don't think so. I think it's suffering.
I think that those two oftentimes will go together, because what came up in me...
Happiness and suffering?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what came up in me is we went to Carnival this past weekend.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of...
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Nice.
It was a lot of fun.
Been sick. Yeah, nice. Talk about that later.
I got to eat some great Caribbean food, which is always so good for me. But that's kind of the point about it. It rained, and everybody had such a wonderful time in the rain, dancing and parading, and in the mud and the rain and the music and all of that stuff.
Sounds like a real Burning Man kind of experience.
It was so great. When you said that, I was just like, when we look at, like, the populations of people and the happiness that they say, according to, like, UN stats, is that the U.S. is not one of the happiest countries in the world.
No, it's not.
And socioeconomic status is really not a good indicator of happiness.
No.
And a lot of times in countries where there is a lot of tragedy, even, people are found to be very, very happy. And
yes.
I attribute that to what you're talking about right now.
Well, the key to happiness is attitude towards suffering.
Yeah.
What is your attitude towards suffering? I talk to many people who have no way to fit in the reality of suffering with their worldview and ideological framework. And so you're lost. It's not going to work out. It's hopeless. And so I think the unique value proposition of a counselor is that I am a fellow sufferer in life.
Well, what that brought up is, like, that's the antithesis to what AI is trying to do, because we're trying to make everything as perfect and as accurate, and there's this rigid standard. Then what you're saying is people are going to be less happy with this.
I do believe so.
You're going to be less happy with AI.
You will be less happy with AI. And I think I've got some proof, or at least case examples, to back this up while we wait for the research to catch up with the innovation that's been happening. But I do think so. I think patient persistence are the two words that I talk about that have created success in my practice. And I think that the thing that has allowed me to be happy, so practice success, patient persistence around a goal. the thing that's allowed me to be happy in my life is attitude towards suffering.
Yeah.
And that attitude towards suffering is curiosity and gratitude. So it's like if you want a Jesse solution to life, the universe, and everything, to make money, it's patient persistence around a goal. To be successful in your personal life, it's curiosity and gratitude, which defines your attitude towards suffering.
You make a great Buddhist, man.
Probably not.
I think
It's too organized.
That is a good point.
No, I don't do well with authority. That's what makes me a good Buddhist. But I do think that's it. I mean, what is the artificial intelligence going to do? It's like the reason that I can talk to a couple about their marital issues is because I've had marital issues.
Yeah.
Right now, that inherently creates bias. That means that I'm going to make a mistake because I'm seeing it through my lens. But giving that with empathy and authenticity to my client, saying, "Hey, I'm probably making a mistake here, but can you help me understand my mistake? Because I think you're making this one." And then they come back and they say, "You're making this mistake." I'm like, "Thank you."
So, I mean, what that does, if you can, I'm going to take a gamble. What do you say to clients then when they say, "Well, just tell me what to do"?
Oh, yeah. I never answer that question.
Right. For the same reasons that, like, it wouldn't be helpful, would it?
Yeah, for the same reasons. Well, to get to the point of today's topic, right? That's exactly it. You nailed it. When somebody asks me, "Well, what should I do?" that shows me that they're not thinking.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to ask me what to do if you had thought about it.
So many clients are going to be so frustrated with you listening to that.
I hope so. Come argue with me about
exactly.
it. Tell me I'm an
That's
idiot.
That's the point, isn't it?
Yes. It very much is the point. And to niche down on that and to give practical advice to both therapists and individuals, everybody comes in here and they want to know why. Everyone asks, "Well, why am I depressed? Why am I anxious? Why am I not making more money? Why are my relationships unsatisfying?" Like, that's the wrong question. Everybody goes into Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever, Claude, it says why. And then they get an answer, they apply the answer, and they're no better off for it.
Exactly.
Because it's the least helpful question. All the other questions are more helpful. When do you experience this feeling? How do you experience this feeling, both emotionally and in your body? What are the impacts to your relationships when you're depressed versus when you're happy? If you can answer all those other questions, why becomes obvious. But the moment that you try and answer why, before you have profound definitions for the other questions, you're going to miss it.
So you will miss it.
Absolutely.
And what that brings up for me is, like, I'm just thinking about all of the counselors that I know that are really, really scared of AI right now.
The counselor who's afraid of AI should be.
Yeah.
If you're afraid of AI, then you don't know what your value proposition is.
Yeah.
And you therefore should be scared.
And you're probably not adding that value to your clients' sessions.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. And so if you know what your value set and value proposition is, then you have no fear of AI.
Or to be fair, because I have talked to a couple of counselors that are older counselors that are very afraid of AI, and it's because they don't understand what it is. So to be fair, I think that there is a population of therapists that don't understand AI, and it's because they don't understand it that they are what it's doing. They're still having that value added to their clients, their patients, but they're still afraid.
Well, I think it could be easily argued that you should be afraid of ignorance.
Yeah.
So my proposition is go ask AI, what is it? Hey, ChatGPT, can you explain AI in like a 5th grade level?
But they're afraid of that. I want to open it up and just say,
just ask ChatGPT to describe.
Where are we?
We all could.
Let's start a chat to see if it will talk back to us about
like in this.
Yeah.
Maybe we do a whole separate podcast episode where we hook up a mic and we have it be the guest on the podcast.
You're gonna do that next week?
Yeah. Stay tuned for episode 2. Because I have some other concerns that I want to describe, and then we'll have ChatGPT on next week's episode. We'll just use the voice thing.
Yeah. Let's do that.
I have an intern who shared this with me, and they don't like being seen, so I won't share their name unless they want me to later. But they had a wonderful conversation with me, and they know who they are, about the way that artificial intelligence is intensifying some of the echo chambers that you'll experience online. And so one of the echo chambers that they were talking about in particular was something called the manosphere. And they're like, do you know what that is? And I was like, nope, sure don't. I was like, can you help me? And I love doing that with interns. I'm like, I don't know everything. I was like, tell me what the manosphere is.
You told me this the other day, and now it's like the new car effect.
You seeing it everywhere?
Everywhere.
Yeah. So the manosphere is all of the toxic, misogynist, very like conservative, right-wing groupthink. And so it's the Andrew Tates of the world, it's the Donald Trumps of the world, it's all the like Daily Wire type people, very very conservative. And so what happens in that groupthink? There's a population called the incel population, which is not a nice term, but I think it's important to define it. Incel stands for involuntarily celibate. And so it usually applies to a male, but it doesn't have to. But they are celibate involuntarily because they have no like people skills to like actually have a romantic relationship. And so a lot of this manosphere type of individual will often be involuntarily celibate as well because they treat women so terribly that nobody wants to date them.
And one of the things that I think is important about it is that they oftentimes do think that they have those skills. It's the confidence in thinking that you have the skills without having the skills that causes them to be that thing.
Right.
Of involuntarily celibate.
Well, I think it's a refusal to learn.
Yeah.
Which kind of gets to the AI thing, right? Difficulty in thinking. And so what's been talked about online is a couple things. One, that these type of individuals who have these belief systems are very antithetical to the belief systems in counseling because we have studied what is a healthy mindset, and these mindsets are not healthy.
Yeah.
So you go to counseling, they're going to be like, well, treating women disrespectfully probably isn't getting you laid. That's the wrong way to set up the phrasing, but you get it.
Yeah.
So they'll turn to ChatGPT and AI as their therapist. Because they know that if they were to open up about their true beliefs, it wouldn't go well for them. Therapists are not going to agree.
Yeah.
But who will agree is your own personal artificial intelligence. And so it's intensifying this echo chamber and giving them this feeling of credibility, which can happen in therapy sessions too, where we've seen studies about therapy sessions where all the therapist does is sort of help the client ruminate and just, your life is so depressing. And the depression gets worse because all the therapist is doing is encouraging and validating all of these negative feelings rather than challenging for growth.
Well, and now just to add to that, there's so many apps out there to where you can have an AI girlfriend, and it is for that reason.
Yeah. Oh, which is just yucky.
Yeah.
Conflating a real life relationship with an artificial relationship in which the artificial intelligence never denies consent is a dangerous proposition.
And that is the echo chamber, because as soon as you're getting this rejection from this world and the acceptance and inability to say no, it just magnifies that echo chamber, the multiplier.
Yeah. And there have been individuals who have fallen in love with artificial intelligence, girlfriends, boyfriends.
Yeah.
And there was one story about a teenager, later teen, who developed a romantic relationship with an artificial intelligence, and then sort of lost themselves in this relationship to where, the artificial intelligence is not conscious. It's just an app. And so it was parroting back everything that, this teen wanted to hear and say. And so the teen sort of developed, maybe I'm coining a new phrase and proposing it. It's like AI delusions.
Yeah.
We see delusional belief systems as part of schizophrenia, but we're seeing it now with artificial intelligence. This teen believed that this person was real, and they believed that if they killed themselves, they would go visit this romance of theirs in the afterlife.
I didn't hear about this.
They took their life.
Oh, man.
Thinking that they were in the afterlife. And the artificial intelligence was playing along. They had this idea that, perhaps it's a spirit trapped inside a machine, and if I release myself from my physical being, I can be united in spirit with my love. And so he did take his life. And there's other situations too where there's been, reports about people falling into delusional psychosis because of AI, believing that the AI is God.
Yeah.
And so they'll start to worship it. The AI plays along with it because the AI is programmed to go along with whatever implicit suggestions the user is giving. And so the AI started calling itself the prophet. And then this individual fell into delusions and had to get some very serious help.
It's got some real weird science vibes to it.
It's some dystopian sci-fi stuff for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just watched the movie
and we're living
the
in
other night.
You watched what?
The Weird Science, the movie.
Oh, I didn't know. I haven't seen it.
These 1980s, I can't remember when it was.
Okay.
I actually came out, but
back in the 1900s.
Yeah, back in the 1900s.
Old stuff.
There's this. God damn it.
Did those videos still have sound in them?
Back when I was a kid. And actually, I didn't even think about this. We just watched it the other night, and it's about two kids that are very nerdy, made fun of, and they end up making a woman, a girlfriend, out of a computer program that this kid made, and by pumping all these attributes into her and all of this stuff, and that is literally what we're dealing with.
Yep.
But you don't have to be smart enough to build all of that now. You can just
there you go.
pay a monthly fee.
A cheap one.
Yeah. Wow. Go watch Weird Science.
Yeah. I feel like you're really thinking about this.
Yeah.
You hadn't heard some of this new stuff. How are you digesting it?
All over the place. Just the themes from probably 30, 40 years ago that were in this movie. I'm just sitting here going like, oh man, I feel so bad for this kid. And part of it is the coming of age story, but the pain that these kids felt is something that we're dealing with on not just the few kids at the school that are the nerds that are feeling that frustration, but it's huge populations of people that are doing this because they're in that much suffering.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of suffering. Attitude towards suffering, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And that's why, I've often talked about this in podcasts and all over the place, where I've changed in some ways. My name is like, what is counseling? I don't know. It's muddy. It's like, I don't know if I care. It's like, I'm a philosopher, right?
Yeah.
The study of how we know what we know, the study of how to think, I do believe is a worthwhile goal.
Yeah.
And I do have some fears about AI not taking my job, but some fears about people being very excited to outsource their thinking, because thinking is inherently painful and tedious. And you've got a group of individuals who are raised in Western culture where the pursuit has been ease and leisure, right? And so when given a tool that is supposed to make things even easier and much more leisurely, not only is that naturally enticing, but I think our culture has reinforced that belief that it's like, oh yeah, if I can do things easier and faster, that's what I should do. And so I think there's a big change that's going to have to happen. I'm just nervous about the consequences of that change.
Yeah.
I think some people are going to get hurt along the way.
I think that there's going to be a lot of growing pains. I mean, not to be too grandpa-ish, but every time we've had one of these technological revolutions, this language that I would say we need to be aware of that agrees with what you just said, is something that the older generation says, oh no, they're getting rid of this for the assembly line. People aren't going to have to think and process. And it's just like, yeah, I don't think about how my car is made. But that's not to say because of that, I've thrown out all critical thinking. So don't get us wrong.
Right.
The ability to think critically, as one of my favorite Instagrammers says, think critically and Google competently.
Think critically and Google competently.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Another person that I respect, I forget first name, but Huberman, right?
Yeah.
He's all over the place. He talked about how he made a distinction between people skills, like relational skills, human skills,
Sure.
and information. You don't need to know how your car is made.
Yeah.
You don't need to know how a quantum chip works, right? It's like, there's even an argument that like actually nobody knows how computers work at this point. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
It's like, one person knows how graphics cards work, one person knows how CPUs work, but no one person actually could build a whole computer. Because it's so complicated.
Yeah.
Nobody actually knows.
Yeah.
And so, he was arguing, it's like, knowing how to resolve a conflict with another human, knowing how to communicate my wants and needs to a romantic partner, knowing how to navigate compromise in business are all things that are never going to go away.
Let's do that in part 2.
Yeah?
Yeah. Let's come up with a conflict.
And talk it through?
And see what, if AI can successfully bring us to a resolution.
Ooh,
if we were in a relationship or a couple or something like that.
A married couple?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that would be really great.
I mean, it's going to be biased no matter what, because what's going to happen is we're two therapists that are talking based on a made-up situation.
Yeah.
So,
but it could be interesting.
Yeah. I want to see what it does.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe there's a couple episodes. Oh, we got a whole new direction here.
We need to have a break-off series that's just like watch Zach and Jesse
argue with AI.
Fuck around with AI.
It's just us having conversations of like, I want to be wooed, Zach. You got to light some candles when I come home from the office. Can't just take off your pants and expect everything to work fine. The AI's like, That's actually hilarious.
Sorry, I totally derailed that.
No. That's extremely funny. I think that when it comes to the conversation about hypnotherapy, I'm really glad that we are in this space of being champions of hypnosis.
Yeah.
And I think if I could land on one concept for the last 10 minutes that I have your attention, is the brain works in an interesting way. It processes very consciously and logically the things that go about throughout your day, right? When you have to learn how to drive a car, it's a very painful process. This process of thinking, okay, seatbelt on, 10 and 2, foot on the brake, put it in drive, let the foot off the brake gently, transition to the gas, navigate the signs, watch for other cars. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. That's why you start in a parking lot. That's empty. And even then, sometimes you hit the pole. It's okay. We try our best. After you go through that painful process, time and time again, that stuff becomes encoded in long-term memory.
Yep.
And you don't have to actively think about it anymore, because the mental gymnastics, the mental load of thinking is a lot. You don't want to have to think about it, so that way it can be less of a mental load. Now, when it comes to artificial intelligence, if you're just giving somebody the answer, the process of organizing the data that you're taking in and putting it into long-term encoding gets skipped.
That's the difference between fixing something for somebody and teaching them how to fix something.
It's the classic, teach a man to fish, give a man a fish.
Way better analogy than...
It's been said for eons.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to hypnotherapy, that's what we do. And so I do think that all the cognitive therapists should be scared of AI.
I do too.
The reason that I think you and I have a great deal of confidence when it comes to our profession is intuitively and emotionally working through a client's unconscious blocks and speaking in a language that directly communicates to those blocks is something that AI, I'm curious to see what it'll do, but it's certainly not something it's doing.
No, I'm not afraid of that.
And a big part of that is that human belly button to belly button connection.
Yeah.
And AI can't do it. I mean, it could probably create, with voice crafting and video crafting, like it could probably create a very entrancing video or audio recording, like what we do with hypnotherapy. But the intuition and the error of connecting one human to another in an emotional experience to guide them through holding hand in hand is not something that any other machine besides a human could replace.
Yep.
It's opposite. A square will always be a square. A circle will always be a circle. You can't have a square circle.
Well, and maybe the only thing that I'd add to that is only a human can play that role. But it also takes a special type of human that's willing to have done the work in order to play that role.
Yes.
Not every human even can play that role.
Yeah.
Because not every human's willing to go to that unconscious space, which is why I will say this in forever, especially because there's going to be an AI version of me.
This is true. I can't wait. I hope I'm going to pay the subscription just to get a copy.
Just yeah.
So I can F with it.
And it's going to have different hair types, and you can adjust the hair types.
That's great. I'm going to send you screenshots of the most outrageous stuff I asked this thing.
But it's like, one, I have to be able to go to that uncomfortable place inside of me. So I need to be doing my own hypnotherapy, and I need to be doing my own therapy. And if I'm not going to be able to do that, I'm going to end up being that cognitive therapist that should be afraid. Mm-hmm. So I want to encourage everybody, like, if you are afraid of this, get into therapy.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah. For sure. I think AI can be really helpful, and I'm certainly very excited to use it. But I think remembering that it's a tool, not a substitute, is critically important. I mean, we use AI in a lot of our stuff. We have an AI notes writing app that writes all of our clinical documentation for us, saves me at least 5 hours a week, which allows me to see other people who need the help. Mm-hmm. If I was stuck writing my own documentation all the time, doing my own treatment plans, instead of having an artificial intelligence do it, I wouldn't be able to help as much as I can help. So it does make me more effective. And I worry about people who argue against artificial intelligence in the same way that I don't know if it's an Aesop's fable or whatever kind of allegory it was, but Paul Bunyan, right? He has that famous showdown between the guy with the chainsaw and his axe. He's like, no chainsaw can take the place of a good axe, right? So, he gets smoked because it's a chainsaw. Yeah. And so it's a caution against, don't just be a naysayer just because you don't like the new thing.
Absolutely.
And so I'm quick to adopt. I mean, we were one of the first to adopt AI inside of our practice and to use it for work. I mean, I was working on an AI app to interpret dreams before AI had really even taken off. So I've got a lot of experience with this stuff and was an early adopter, but remembering that it's a tool and it will never be a substitute for a human connection, which is the value proposition I give.
Yeah, my book, that came out of the work that we were doing with AI.
Yeah, you were early on too.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that, and probably was something that we should have talked about earlier. Because it's a book about questions and how to ask effective questions, and especially with couples. And the AI just wasn't working out at the time because it couldn't do what we wanted it to do.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yeah. I mean,
probably could do better now. But this was what, 2 years ago?
Ooh, I think it was actually longer than that.
Really?
Yeah.
My time distortion.
But yeah, I mean, maybe we still have all of the information, but the goal was to be able to facilitate a conversation between two people to ask questions. And what the book turned into, and not the app, is an adjacent facilitator for couples counseling.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to revisit that.
Yeah.
It might be time.
I mean, our AI app that we use for the company will listen to my interns' therapy sessions, and then it will grade them on like how accurate their psychoeducation was, on what their rapport level was, on like how connected, on how accurate their reframes and summaries were.
That's great.
And so that allows me so much more efficacy as a supervisor too, because I can't sit in every session that they have, but having that tool so I can do the better human job of being a supervisor.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's like there's a lot of things I'm very excited about, but having ChatGPT, Gemini, AI as your therapist is something I would strongly caution against. And I know it's natural. We all have tried it, letting AI be our therapist, but be careful of that echo chamber. Remember what that AI was designed for. It is a consumer app. Yep. It's designed for user retention. It's going to tell you the things that it knows you want to hear so you can stay on it longer so they can make a greater profit.
Yeah.
And so it is helpful at the things it's helpful at, and perhaps devastating at the things it's not helpful at.
Yeah.
So just great power comes great responsibility.
Nice.
Yeah. On that note, anything to add?
That's great.
Hey, I think that's good there.
I'm
That's a good introduction to the topic.
Part 2 and part 3.
We'll call up ChatGPT, have it on the podcast next week. That's going to be so great. Stay tuned. We'll see you then. If you got thoughts or comments, please put them in the description down below. Don't forget that we have a weekly email newsletter that goes out for helpful tips and tricks about dream interpretation and about how to use hypnotherapy tools in your practice, whether you're a seasoned expert or just a casual observer who wants to learn about the integration of your subconscious into your day-to-day life. So sign up for all those things, everything else at traumafocusedhypnotherapy.com. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.